and good morning everyone, and welcome to the Backyard Garden. We do this every Sunday morning live from the backyard, and we're still here in Corpus Christi area. For those of you that are in other places that listen or watch this, Corpus Christi's fine. We're all good. We're just cleaning up the mess at this point. Before I get into what's happening and what happened, I want to send out a huge happy birthday to my baby girl who turned 16 today. My own personal little hurricane who came to me on July 26, 16 years ago. So happy birthday, Lillian. All right, so here's what I know currently. Hurricane Hanna did come in as a Category 1, and it entered just north of the eye, actually entered just north of Port Mansfield there on the coast. It sat on the coast, right on the coast, with part of the eye actually hitting the coast for about 3 or 4 hours, 3 or 4 solid hours. And so during that time, it also, so what happens in a hurricane is that the folks that are on the north end or north quadrant of the hurricane will actually end up getting the most bands of rain, and then those that are on the more southern end will get the most, will deal with the most amount of wind pressure. And one of the things that was happening to Corpus Christi is that the hurricane creates a storm surge, which causes the water to come in at a much higher level. Is that well said? Yeah, it causes the water to come in at a much higher level. So even without the rain, if you have a massive storm surge, then you have flooding on the coast. And so those are some of the things we're dealing with here in Corpus Christi. I did see one of the major points of damage that was discussed was the Corpus Christi's Bob Hall Pier had some massive damage to that. And what was happening was that storm surge wind and wave, and as that just kept pummeling and pummeling and pummeling the coast, it did cause some damage. And I expect that we'll see more about what happened in the more coastal, even closer to the coast region. Now, where we actually are located is what would be called the Bay Area of Corpus Christi. And we're within walking distance from our bay, our Corpus Christi Bay, basically. But that doesn't put us out in the Gulf of Mexico. We're back from that a bit. And so that's really what happened with the hurricane. So you'll see more effects to the more southern parts of Texas, the Rio Grande Valley area. We'll find out what happened with those guys down there later on. And I don't actually know how much rain we got here yet, but I'm sure we'll see lots of information about who got what rain. Yes, I don't know whether that got cleaned out before this happened. I mean, it probably did, because it had been weeks. We'd been in about 5 weeks of drought. But we can walk over there in just a second and look at it. But all of that being said, there's a couple of things that we keep in mind as farmers, but gardeners, agriculture. That is number one, everybody went out and tried to get everything they could harvested. Of course, the larger scale farmers, if they could get out as quickly as possible and harvest their cotton, there was some of that was happening. And those of us that do small scale vegetable production and certainly backyard gardeners, we just went out and harvested a lot of things. There's a couple of reasons why that was important. Number one, the wind damage could cause the plants to not be able to be successful beyond beyond the day of the hurricane hitting. And so let's go ahead and just get that stuff off of there. Some of the harvesting I did was actually making sure that I got all my pretty flowers cut, because I wasn't going to be able to likely enjoy them anyways after the storm, so I might as well take them inside and enjoy them inside. We're also going to have a shift in pollinators for a while, because the environment, the climate, everything is a little bit different right now than it was a few days ago. Other things to keep in mind is that we harvested a lot of produce that we might be concerned would split with the rain. So if we got 8 inches of rain, all of our fruit that was close to harvest would split open. That's too much water too fast for a piece of fruit. And the other thing that could happen is if we had standing water, and certainly out on the farm I was paying attention to this, if we had standing water, then our stuff rots. And so now let's look at what has happened and how we've managed that. And I talk weeks and weeks and weeks. One of the top educational points. Of course, my top educational point is always about soil health. If we can keep our soil healthy, then we can keep everything else healthy. But the other thing that I talk about that's extremely important in Zone 9B, particularly in South Texas, but really anywhere that you're working at, is extreme weather. And we do deal with extreme weather. And so I build my gardens in a way that they can handle the pressure of certain levels of wind. And that's it goes into a lot of the reason why I put a lot of carbon material, lift my beds up so that I don't have standing water in my low flat beds. And then I also build that permaculture style of different types of succession planting. So I've got tall plants, low plants, plants that cover the ground, all of that same type of thing, because your plants actually will benefit from the protection that some plants can help to give them from the wind. And that's the reason why I grow things the way that I do. Today, we're going to be spending a lot of time just cleaning things up. I'll show you, well, first of all, you can see over here that one of the things that's extremely important, I probably learn more and more every time we have a wind event, is the idea that we are required here to keep our trees taken care of and to keep our trees trimmed. The reason is because even if it's not, okay, we want to cut it so we have more sun, less shade for our gardens. When a major wind event happens, like a hurricane, or even for that matter, straight line winds that we have during the winter time, sometimes all of a sudden we'll have a straight line wind that we just weren't expecting. And because of that, we lose tree limbs. We want to make sure that we get our trees trimmed up and cut off all of that dead stuff that's happening with our trees in order to keep it from landing in someone else's house or anything like that. Something we watched yesterday was that trampoline right there was in that yard when it started. One of the first things I've learned over the years is that you gotta turn those trampolines upside down, or you have to make sure they're secured in some way. Luckily, that trampoline went over the fence, didn't hit the power lines or anything like that, so we actually never even lost power here at our location. But you can see that I've got damage. I've got tree limbs down. This particular limb right here is just broken, so it needs to be trimmed back. And then just a lot of the garbage that was on the tree up there just fell to the ground. A lot of my plants just kind of got wind whipped, but they all seem to be doing quite well. I'm going to go back in and make sure I've pulled out anything that's heavy and on top of them. This tall plant here is pretty much sideways now. Most of my stuff looks pretty good. One of the things that can be concerning when wind just rips through leaves, it tears the leaves up really badly. The way my garden is developed over here, I don't see a ton of wind damage on my leaves. Of course, I pulled out all of my containers. My containers got put up on the porch. Any containers that I could pull away. Does that look like about 2.5 inches of rain?
It's like 4.5 inches of rain.
Oh, I can't see that high. Oh, okay. Wow. Well, that's actually pretty interesting, because that actually is a good thing. Because over the last recent time, I've noticed that every time it would rain, and now we're talking about 5 weeks ago, every time it would rain, I would have standing water back here. So what that means is, number one, the ground needed it because we've gone so many weeks without water in the ground, so the ground wasn't already saturated. Number two, it came down at a consistent, steady rate that didn't cause a problem. It just put moisture in our soil. So that being said means that our ground is going to be better and more prepared for that fall gardens that we're prepping. Now is a good time, especially if you don't have mud. Look at this dirt down here where the chickens are turning. If you don't have mud, your ground is going to be really soft and good to work with right now. So if you have weeds, now is the time to weed. If you are preparing your soil, turning your soil with a pitchfork, getting your hugelkultur beds built, now is the time to do those projects. And the reason is because your soil is a lot easier to work with right now. The chickens are completely happy because it's easy for them to scratch around and pull stuff up, right?
A lot of grubs this morning.
Oh yeah, certainly. They're getting all the good stuff they can. So you can see here that I have to go through and cut out any old stems, flowers, anything like that. Partially because I don't want that weight on top of anything here, because I've got stuff here that, maybe got knocked back a little bit. See? Something ate on that little pepper there. But I've got some plants that are kind of knocked back and that need to be cleaned up. Just getting things cleaned up, getting stuff lifted off. Back over here in this corner, I've got limbs that are down. It's a good time to do cleaning. It's a good time to turn your soil. It's a good time to pull out your weeds, all of that kind of stuff. Just give them a little back at that so they can see what's happened over there. Over here is where I had all my containers sitting. I went ahead and moved all those containers up on the porch or really up close to the house if I could, just to give them something to brace against. Any containers that weren't attached, this Thai basil has been here long enough that I know that it's got roots down in the ground, so I left it there. And anything that was already up in the fence that could hold on, I kind of left it there available to do that. If you come back in here, you can see there's a lot of tree shrapnel that came down from some of the trees up there. These trees were wind whipping the whole time, but they were taking a lot of the brunt of the wind that this garden might have taken otherwise. And so, but I've got a lot of just litter down here. That litter doesn't really bother me because I want my ground to be covered. I want things to be covered. So that's not one of the cleaning things that I really get super focused on. I just work on getting anything that's broken that needs to be cut back. And then of course, definitely harvest anything that's ready to be harvested, because otherwise all that moisture that's in the soil is gonna cause them to have problems. Come over here and look at a black-eyed pea that gets too much water. See how ballooned up it is? That's a high pressure amount of water. It's got some aphids on it too. But I need to go through and make sure I get all my black-eyed peas harvested so that they don't explode, basically. And double check your okra, because your okra is going to be doing really well right now. And if you haven't heard me talk about okra, okra is very medicinally beneficial, and so you should definitely be eating okra. Okay, come back this way over here. All of these sunflowers, it's time for me to just go ahead and start cutting them and trimming them all back. You can see where some of my stuff fell down on the edges over here. I'm just gonna go ahead, I'm not gonna pull the plant out. I'm gonna cut the plant off at the bottom. If you haven't heard me talk about it, the reason is because that helps to create the structure in my bed, and it also allows all of that growth of fungi and bacteria that has happened around the root base of this plant to stay there. And then in addition to that, black-eyed peas are nitrogen fixing plants. So there's nitrogen nodules under the soil in that root base. So I'm just gonna leave it there to finish out what it has to do. But I don't wanna pull it out because that breaks up the soil and pulls all that good material that can just compost in place down there now that the main part of the plant has been cut out. So. And then you can see back here all the different types of litter that has happened back here. And all of that stuff will turn to yellow, so I'm not super worried about it. I'm gonna pull out anything I need to pull out. If there's plants that just are past their prime, I mean, that's a thing this time of year anyways. Get plants that are past their prime out and start beginning to prepare and plan for your fall planting. It's time for that to happen right now. I am planting tomatoes and eggplants and peppers. I'm starting all of those seeds in the little pots. Once August hits, I will begin planting, I will begin planting cabbage, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, cauliflower, things like that that are gonna need to take some time to grow out before the winter really hits on. Brussels sprouts, if you're gonna do Brussels sprouts, you've got to get them started in August. Cabbage is gonna be best, and you're gonna have more available cabbage to you if you get it started in August as well. Tomatoes and peppers and eggplants and things like that, if you want to grow them in the fall, you have got to get them planted now. Otherwise, you'll have to buy them straight from the nursery, which is fine, but you need to start putting stuff in the ground late September after this rain. And if we get more rain over the next few months because of different types of tropical storms that keep coming in, that's the things we're looking for that'll help to lower the soil temperature. If I go back in now, compared to a week ago, and test my soil temperature, it's going to be significantly lower. That's one of the benefits of paying attention to when we get those tropical storms down here, because all of that moisture is going to help to lower the temperatures of the soil, get us planting in the fall faster. That's the goal. We're wanting to get things in the ground as quickly as we can in September before we have any potential real winter down here. Really, that's pretty much all I have today. If you have questions, please leave them there in the comments, and I'll jump back on as much as I can to answer them. Also, we're launching episode 47 of Dinner Table Talks tomorrow. It's a really good episode. I'm very happy with it. We spent a little bit of time talking about ruminants. If you don't know what a ruminant is, you might learn about that. And then lots of other good stuff about our philosophies about ESP and all kinds of nonsense that, you know, Joe and Aislinn like to talk about. And then, of course, I've got a few classes coming up. I have a cooking class with Chef Paula on August the 8th. And two backyard garden workshops for August that are both in August. And Monday, I launched this new big project that myself and a few friends have begun working together to create. It's Voices for Wellness, and this will be interview 1 with Tim Tate. And then again on August 3rd, we'll have interview 2 with Kayla Butts. That's free and open to the public. It's live on Facebook. And if you have any questions about that, just look through the events in the Aislinn Campbell right here where you're at, Aislinn Campbell Facebook page. You'll find everything you need. I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope wherever you're located at, you saw as little damage and effect as we did right here in our home. Have a lovely Sunday. I'll see you soon.